January 16, 1998, 11:47 p.m. Treasure Island Casino, Las Vegas Strip, Nevada. Dennis Nickresh stood in front of the Wheel of Fortune slot machine. Around him, the casino floor pulsed with light and noise. Bells rang. Digital melodies overlapped. Somewhere behind him, a woman screamed as quarters poured from a machine. Security camera footage would later show the timestamp. 23:47:12. Nikrash's hand moved to the machine's side panel. He inserted a key. The panel opened. His hand disappeared inside the cabinet for exactly 90 seconds. The machine's display froze. Then it reset. At 23:51:04, he pressed the spin button. The wheel stopped. Jackpot. $334,000. Casino personnel arrived with champagne and cameras. Nikrash's face showed nothing. No surprise, no joy. Just a blank stare at the flashing screen. Behind him, two men in maintenance uniforms melted into the crowd. The Nevada Gaming Control Board had been watching him for 6 months. This win was the 47th suspicious jackpot linked to machines he'd been near. But that night was only the end of a story that began 2 decades earlier, when a locksmith discovered something casinos believed was mathematically impossible. So how did a Chicago locksmith with no gambling addiction turn a technical understanding of locks and circuits into one of the longest-running casino exploitation schemes in American history, stealing an estimated $16 million before anyone understood how? Chicago, 1976. Dennis Nickresh owned a small locksmith shop on Milwaukee Avenue. Gray brick building, faded sign, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. He was 38 years old, married, 2 children, small house in Cicero, annual income, $32,000, enough to pay bills, not enough to feel anything. Nickresh specialized in high-security locks. Banks hired him, jewelry stores, sometimes casinos when they opened new locations in Nevada or Atlantic City. He'd arrive, examine their vault doors, their cash cages, their surveillance rooms. He'd write reports. Everyone trusted him because he looked like exactly what he was, a tradesman in work boots and a polo shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. But Nickresh had a particular skill that no one paid attention to. He could reverse engineer any mechanical or electromechanical system just by watching it fail. Lock jams? He'd study the pins, the springs, the tiny tolerances between components. After 2 hours, he'd know exactly why it failed and 3 ways to make it fail on purpose. Alarm system glitches? Same process. He kept notebooks. 12 years of detailed observations on security vulnerabilities, timing sequences, failure points in systems that were supposed to be perfect. No one cared. He was just the locksmith. In 1980, a casino client in Reno asked him to inspect security on their new electronic slot machines. The machines had just been installed. They represented the future of gaming. Computer-controlled, programmable, supposedly impossible to cheat. Nickresh spent 3 days in Reno. On the second day, he watched a technician open one of the machines to replace a defective component. The cabinet door swung open. Inside, circuit boards, wiring harnesses, mechanical reels connected to stepper motors. And at the center, a small rectangular chip plugged into a socket. The technician pulled the chip out, plugged in a new one, closed the door. The whole process took less than 2 minutes. Nickresh asked what the chip was. EEPROM, the technician said. Erasable programmable read-only memory. It's the brain. Controls the game logic, payout percentages, everything. What stops someone from changing it? The technician laughed. You'd need physical access, and even then, you'd need to know how to program it. Plus, we'd notice. That night, Nickresh sat in his hotel room and wrote in his notebook. The entire game lives on one chip. No one watches the chip. He flew back to Chicago the next morning. For 6 months, he tried to forget about it. He went to work. He fixed locks. He came home. He ate dinner with his family. He watched television. But the thought stayed with him. If the game was just code on a chip, and the chip was removable, then the game wasn't fixed. It was just software. And software could be rewritten. In early 1982, Nickresh bought a used slot machine from a Nevada distributor. $500, completely legal. He told his wife it was for his workshop, a hobby project. He installed it in the basement. For the next 18 months, he studied it. He opened the cabinet. He traced the wiring. He removed the EEPROM chip and bought a chip reader from an electronics supply store. He extracted the code, line by line, and began learning what it did. The code wasn't complicated. It was elegant. The random number generator cycled through millions of combinations per second. When a player pressed the button, the RNG stopped wherever it was. That number determined the real positions. The EEPROM translated the number into a payout. The system was designed to be random, but randomness was just math, and math could be controlled. By mid-1983, Nekrash had reprogrammed his first chip. He modified the code so the machine would pay a jackpot on the third spin, every time. He tested it 200 times in his basement. 200 jackpots. No variance. No randomness. Total control. He sat on his workshop stool and stared at the machine. Around him, tools, half-disassembled locks, notebooks filled with sketches and code. He thought, the casinos take millions from people who don't understand how the system works. What if someone did understand? The system wasn't broken. It just trusted the wrong thing. Las Vegas, 1984. Nekrash began visiting 4 times a year. He told his wife he was meeting casino clients. Technically true. He did meet with casino security managers sometimes, consulting on vault systems or lock upgrades. But mostly, he watched. He studied how slot machines were maintained. He timed shift changes. He mapped camera positions. He noted which areas of the casino floor had coverage gaps, which didn't. Casinos had hundreds of cameras, but the cameras focused on players, dealers, cash cages. They watched hands. They watched faces. They watched money moving across tables. No camera zoomed in on a technician opening a slot machine for routine maintenance. Nekrash created spreadsheets, 47 casinos, 12 machine models, 8 optimal time windows per day when maintenance could happen with minimal supervision. The pattern was always the same. A machine malfunctioned or triggered a maintenance flag. A technician arrived, opened the cabinet, swapped a component, closed the cabinet, walked away. Total time, 3 to 5 minutes. No supervisor watching. No verification that the component installed was the same one removed. The system trusted the uniform. In March 1985, Nekrash sat in the Fremont Casino downtown and watched a maintenance call happen in real time. A Wheel of Fortune machine 2 rows away triggered an error code. A technician arrived within 4 minutes. He wore a blue uniform with a Fremont logo. He carried a small tool bag. The technician opened the panel, reached inside, did something Nekrash couldn't see from his angle, closed the panel, logged the repair on a clipboard, left. No one watched except Nekrash. He wrote in his notebook, "They trust the uniform, not the chip." But Nekrash had a problem. He couldn't open a casino machine himself. He wasn't a licensed technician. He didn't have the keys. He didn't have the uniform. He needed someone with access. In August 1985, Nekrash approached a slot technician named Dennis McAndrew. McAndrew worked at the Stardust Casino, age 29. Salary, $28,000 a year. He had a gambling problem. He owed money. Nekrash met him in a parking lot off Boulder Highway at 2 in the morning. "I need you to do something for me," Nekrash said. "Open a machine, swap 1 chip, walk away." "What kind of chip?" "Doesn't matter. I'll give it to you. You just install it." "Why?" "Because I'll pay you $50,000. McAndrew stared at him. "For swapping a chip? For keeping your mouth shut and swapping a chip?" McAndrew thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. "When?" "September 12th, 1985. 2:14 a.m. Stardust Casino. Shift change window. Graveyard crew just clocked in. Swing shift heading home. Casino floor still populated but not crowded. Slot section near the poker room entrance. 40 machines, maybe 12 occupied." McAndrew walked across the floor carrying his tool bag. Navy blue uniform, Stardust logo on the chest, key ring on his belt. No one looked at him twice. He reached machine B47, row 12, a double diamond model, pulled the key, opened the service panel. Inside, circuit boards, coin hopper, wiring, and the EEPROM socket. He reached into his tool bag, pulled out the chip Nikrash had given him that afternoon, a small black rectangle, 8 metal pins along the bottom. He removed the original chip, placed it in anti-static foam in his bag, inserted the new chip, pressed until it seated. Time elapsed, 90 seconds. He closed the panel, locked it, wrote on his clipboard, B47, payout sensor calibration, complete. He walked away. At 2:22 a.m., Dennis Nikrash sat down at machine B47. He inserted a $20 bill. The credit display showed 20 runners. First spin, $5 bet, no win. Second spin, $5 bet, small win, $15. Third spin, $5 bet. The reel stopped. Jackpot, $12,400. Bells rang. Lights flashed. A slot attendant arrived. Congratulations, sir. Don't touch anything. Nikrash sat perfectly still. Casino personnel verified the machine. Everything checked out. Payout was legitimate. They processed the paperwork, issued a check. Nikrash signed the tax forms. 3 days later, he cashed the check at his bank in Chicago. He paid McAndrew $6,000 in cash. 2 weeks later, the Nevada Gaming Control Board conducted a random audit of Stardust slot machines. An analyst noticed that machine B47 had hit a jackpot 6 days after its last maintenance cycle. Unusual, but not impossible. The analyst noted the anomaly in a report. No investigation was launched. Nikrash didn't know about the report. He was already planning the next hit. By December 1985, Nikrash and McAndrew had executed 2 more jackpots. Total take, $87,000. No alarms, no investigations, no pattern detected. Nikrash sat in his Chicago workshop and looked at his notebooks. Pages of data, casino floor maps, shift schedules, machine IDs, jackpot amounts. He wrote, "The house doesn't lose because of luck. It loses because it trusted a chip." The system worked. The system was blind. The only limit was greed. Between 1986 and 1992, Nikrash built a network. He recruited 3 more technicians from different casinos. Michael Balsamo from the Tropicana, Anthony Granito from Caesar's Palace, Vince Marcoux from Circus Circus. Payment structure, $10,000 to $50,000 per job, depending on jackpot size. Rules were simple. Never hit the same casino twice within 6 months. Never use the same machine twice. Never get greedy in one location. Nikrash began targeting casinos in Reno, Atlantic City, Lake Tahoe, Laughlin. He'd spend weeks studying each location, mapping cameras, timing shifts, selecting machines near exits or high-traffic areas where noise and movement provided cover. In his Chicago workshop, he bought 14 different slot machine models. He reverse-engineered the EPROM code for each one. He created a library of modified chips, each programmed to trigger a jackpot on a specific spin. He stored them in labeled cases. Wheel of Fortune V2.1, 5 spins. Double Diamond, 7 spins. The money grew steadily. 4 jackpots in 1986, 6 in 1987, 8 in 1988. Never enough to trigger pattern recognition systems. Never in obvious clusters. By 1992, the total take reached $4.2 million. Nikrash laundered the money through real estate, small rental properties in Chicago suburbs. He bought and sold classic cars for cash. He made loans to friends and family, creating paper trails that looked like investments. The IRS never flagged him. Casinos issued W-2G forms for every jackpot. As far as anyone could tell, Dennis Nikrash was just an incredibly lucky gambler. But there were close calls. April 1988, Sands Casino, Atlantic City, 10:42 p.m. Michael Balsamo opened machine C109. He began swapping the chip. A pit boss walked by. Problem with the machine? Balsamo's hands froze for half a second. Routine maintenance. Payout mechanism was sticking. The pit boss watched for 30 seconds. Then he nodded and kept walking. Balsamo's hands shook. The swap took 5 minutes instead of 90 seconds. Nikrash sat 2 rows away watching. He almost stood up and left. Almost aborted the whole thing. But Balsamo finished, closed the cabinet, walked away. 20 minutes later, Nikrash sat down at the machine. 7th spin, jackpot, $48,000. That night in a hotel room in Atlantic City, Balsamo told Nikrash, "I thought we were done." Nikrash said nothing. He just counted out Balsamo's share and left. November 1989, Bally's Casino, Las Vegas. Nikrash programmed a chip for a 7th-spin jackpot. He sat down at the machine and began playing. On the 5th spin, a woman sat at the adjacent machine. She smiled at him. "You look like you're winning. I never win here." Nikrash forced himself to smile back. "Just lucky tonight." 6th spin. The woman's machine malfunctioned. An alarm sounded. A technician arrived. The woman was asked to move. Nikrash was alone again. 7th spin. Jackpot. $91,000. Later he realized if the woman had stayed, she would have been a witness to the exact programmed spin number. Someone might have noticed. Someone might have asked questions. He'd gotten lucky. Again. March 1991. Harrah's Casino, Reno. The Nevada Gaming Control Board launched a pilot program. Random EEPROM audits. 3 machines per casino per quarter. Anthony Granito swapped a chip in machine G14. 2 weeks later, that machine was selected for audit. An auditor removed the EEPROM, checked the serial number against the factory database. The number matched, but the code version didn't. The auditor noted the discrepancy, submitted a report. The report sat in a queue with 600 other audits. By the time it was reviewed 5 months later, Nikrash had already hit the machine and moved on. No follow-up investigation was launched, but someone was noticing. January 1992. Nevada Gaming Control Board headquarters, Las Vegas. Laura Chen was a compliance analyst, 34 years old. She'd been reviewing jackpot payout data across 14 Las Vegas casinos. She noticed something strange. Certain machines were hitting jackpots slightly more often than probability models predicted. The difference was tiny, 0.03% above expected frequency, but it was consistent across multiple casinos, across multiple machine types. Chen flagged 19 machines for deeper review. She submitted a report, possible RNG drift or EEPROM calibration issue. The report was forwarded to the Fraud Investigation Unit. It was classified as low priority. Between 1992 and 1995, Nikrash grew bolder. He increased the frequency from 4 jackpots per year to 10. He targeted higher denomination machines. Wheel of Fortune. Megabucks. The jackpots got bigger. 50,000, 150,000, 400,000. By the end of 1995, the total take reached $11.6 million. Nikrash kept detailed records, dates, casinos, machine IDs, jackpot amounts. He needed to track which machines had been hit to avoid repeats. The notebooks sat in an unlocked filing cabinet in his home office. He never thought anyone would see them. June 1996. Nevada Gaming Control Board. Special Agent Robert Shepard joined the Fraud Investigation Unit. Age 41. Former FBI. He'd spent 15 years investigating financial fraud and pattern recognition cases. His first assignment, review Laura Chen's 1992 report. After 4 years, it had finally been prioritized. Shepard's method was simple. Map every jackpot over $50,000 in Nevada over the past 10 years. Cross-reference dates, machine IDs, payout amounts, player names, technician logs. He built a database. 1,700 jackpots. Most were clean, random distribution, expected variance. But 47 stood out. Same technician names appearing near multiple jackpots. Dennis McAndrew, Michael Balsamo, Anthony Granito, Ronald Harris. Shepard didn't yet understand what it meant, but he kept building the database. December 1997. Nikrash decided to execute one final score. 20 years, 47 jackpots, $16 million. Time to stop, but he wanted one last big hit, something memorable. Target, Wheel of Fortune machine, Treasure Island Casino, high-profile machine, large jackpot, over $3 million. He recruited a new technician, Ronald Harris, recently hired at Treasure Island. Payment offer, $200,000 cash. Harris accepted. For 3 weeks, they scouted the casino. They identified the machine, WF12, near the main entrance. High visibility area, optimal time, Friday night, 11:30 p.m., busiest period. Maximum noise and distraction. Swap window, 90 seconds during a simulated maintenance call. Program spin, fifth spin equals jackpot. Nikrash programmed the chip. Tested it 100 times in his workshop. Flawless. He flew to Las Vegas on January 14th, booked a room at the Mirage, paid cash. On January 15th, he met Harris in a parking lot behind a warehouse on Boulder Highway. He handed over the chip in a small black case. Harris said, "Tomorrow night, 11:45. Nikrash nodded. What he didn't know, Special Agent Shepard had narrowed his suspect list to 11 technicians. Ronald Harris was number 3. The FBI had opened a preliminary investigation. Surveillance authorization had been approved. Wiretaps, financial records, travel logs. But no physical surveillance yet. Not enough evidence for a warrant. January 16th, 1998, 9:01 p.m. Nikrash sat in his Mirage hotel room. He stared at the clock on the nightstand. He hadn't eaten since noon. 20 years. 47 jackpots. Never caught. One more. At 11:30 p.m., he walked out of the hotel, crossed the strip toward Treasure Island. Neon lights reflected off wet pavement. Traffic hummed. Tourists crowded the sidewalks. He didn't notice the sedan parked across the street. Inside, Special Agent Shepard and 2 Nevada gaming control officers. They weren't there for Nikrash. Not yet. They were there to follow Harris. 11:38 p.m. Treasure Island Casino, main floor. Nikrash entered through the revolving doors on the south side. The casino floor spread out before him. 1,200 slot machines, 87% occupied. The noise was overwhelming. Bells, digital jingles, shouting from the craps tables, layered sound like static. Lighting, low amber overhead. Machine screens provided most of the illumination. Nikrash wore dark jeans, a gray windbreaker, a Chicago Cubs baseball cap. He walked northwest toward the Wheel of Fortune section. Machine WF-12. Row 14, position 3. 10 feet from the main aisle. Currently occupied. A middle-aged woman sat there spinning slowly. The credit display showed $40. Nikrash found a machine 2 rows over, sat down, didn't play, just watched. 11:41 p.m., casino back corridors. Ronald Harris exited the employee break room on the second floor. He carried a small black nylon tool bag, service key on a lanyard around his neck, 2-way radio clipped to his belt, his uniform, Treasure Island Maintenance Division, name badge, R. Harris. He walked down the service stairs to the main floor access hallway. His radio crackled. "Harris, you copy." "Copy. Heading to floor for scheduled maintenance check." 10-4. Log it when you're done. Harris pushed through the door onto the casino floor. 11:43 p.m. Outside. Boulder Highway. Unmarked sedan. Special Agent Shepard sat in the passenger seat. He held binoculars watching the Treasure Island employee entrance. Nevada Gaming Control Officer Martinez sat in the back, reviewing financial records on a laptop. 3 deposits in the past 6 months, Martinez said. 18,000, 22,000, 31,000, all cash. Harris claimed gambling winnings. FBI liaison Agent Cole behind the wheel. "Enough for a warrant?" Shepard lowered the binoculars. "Not yet. Need to catch the act." 11:44 p.m., main casino floor. The woman at machine WF-12 pressed the cash-out button. A ticket printed. She took it and stood up. Nikrash waited 20 seconds. Then he walked over, sat down, inserted a $100 bill. Credit, $100. He checked his watch. 11:44:18. Harris should be here by now. 11:45 p.m. Service corridor door. Harris stepped onto the main floor. He walked toward the Wheel of Fortune section. Row 14. Security camera Cam 47 captured him entering the frame at 11:45:04. Wide angle. 40 people visible. Harris was one among many. He reached machine WF-12. "Evening, sir. Need to run a quick diagnostic. Just take a minute." Nikrash looked up. "No problem." He stood, stepped aside. Harris unlocked the service panel with his key. The door swung open. Inside, circuit boards, wiring harnesses, the coin hopper, the EPROM socket. Harris reached into his tool bag, pulled out a small black case, opened it. 2 APROM chips inside, one labeled WF125X. 11:45 p.m. Outside. Shepard's radio crackled. Casino surveillance supervisor, cooperating with the investigation. Shepard, Harris just opened a machine on the main floor. Row 14. Copy. Do not approach. Just watch. Agent Cole. We going in? Not yet. Need to see who plays it after he closes. 11:46 p.m. Inside the machine, Harris removed the original EEPROM chip from its socket. 8-pin dip package. He placed it in anti-static foam in his tool bag. He took the rigged chip from the case, inserted it into the socket, pressed firmly until it seated. Checked the connection. No loose pins. Time elapsed. 87 seconds. Then footsteps. Someone approaching. A pit boss. Michael Torrance. Walking his routine patrol. Everything okay there? Harris didn't look up. Yeah, just a payout sensor recalibration. System flagged it this morning. Need anything? Nope, almost done. Torrance nodded, kept walking toward the poker room. Nick Rash stood 8 feet away, facing a slot machine 2 rows over. His heart rate spiked. If Torrance checks the logs, if he asked to see the work order. But Torrance disappeared into the crowd. 11:47 p.m. Harris closed the cabinet, locked the panel. All set, sir. Thanks for your patience. No problem. Harris walked away. Tool bag over his shoulder. Security camera, cam 47 timestamp. 11:47:12. Harris exits frame. 11:47 p.m. Outside. He's moving, Shepard said. Harris just left the machine. And the player? Still there. Sitting down now. Martinez pulled up the casino player database on his laptop. Anyone we know? Run facial recognition when we get footage. Right now, just watch. 11:47:30 p.m. Machine WF12. Nick Rash sat down, reinserted his player card. Credits still showed $100. The program, jackpot on the 5th spin, first spin, $5 bet, no win. Second spin, $5 bet, small win, $15. Third spin, $5 bet, no win. Fourth spin, $5 bet, no win. Fifth spin, $5 bet. He pressed the button at 11:48:22. The reel spun. Wheel symbol, wheel symbol, wheel symbol. The screen flashed. Jackpot. An alarm sounded. Loud bell tone. Lights on the machine canopy flashed red and gold. Digital display. $3,934,000. $0. Nick Rash's face showed nothing. No smile, no shock. Blank. Nearby players turned, stared. A crowd began forming. A slot attendant arrived within 20 seconds. Congratulations, sir. Don't touch anything. We'll be right with you. 11:49 p.m. Casino security office, 2nd floor. Surveillance supervisor called the floor manager. Big jackpot, WF12. Looks legit so far. Verify machine integrity. Pull the logs. A technician was dispatched. Not Harris. Someone else. 11:51 p.m. Machine WF12. The technician opened the panel. Checked the EEPROM chip. Seated correctly. No visible tampering. Coin hopper full. He ran a diagnostic from an external device. Result: machine functioning within normal parameters. Floor manager arrived with paperwork. Sir, we'll need ID and tax forms. This is a W2G payout. Congratulations. Nick Rash handed over his driver's license. Illinois. Floor manager radioed accounting. Start processing payout. $3.7 million. 11:54 p.m. Outside. Shepard's radio. Shepard, you need to hear this. Machine WF12 just hit $3.7 million. The same machine Harris just serviced? Affirmative. Get me the player's name. Now. Agent Cole. That's not coincidence. Martinez, call the federal prosecutor. We need an emergency warrant. Tonight. 11:56 p.m. Casino floor. Nick Rash was surrounded. Casino personnel, photographers, a cocktail waitress with champagne, cameras flashing. He forced himself to smile for the photos. His mind calculated. Payout will take 30 minutes minimum. Check or wire transfer. They'll process upstairs. Then I walk out. Drive to the airport. Gone by 2 a.m. He didn't see Shepard entering the casino through the employee entrance. Second floor, 12:02 a.m. Casino accounting office. Nikrash was escorted upstairs by a security guard and the floor manager. He was offered a seat in a private office. Accounting manager, we can issue a cashier's check or arrange a wire transfer. Which do you prefer? Check is fine. It'll take about 20 minutes. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm good. 12:04 a.m. Surveillance room. Shepard entered with Martinez and Cole. The surveillance supervisor pulled footage. Here's Harris at the machine. 11:45 to 11:47. The screen showed Harris opening the cabinet. Hands inside, closing the cabinet. Zoom in. What's he holding? The technician enhanced the image. A small black case visible in Harris's hand. That's not standard tools. Pull earlier footage. Show me Harris entering. The footage rewound. Harris carrying his tool bag. Different bulge shape than usual. 12:09 a.m. Accounting office. The manager returned. Mr. Nikrash, the check is printing now. Just need your signature on the tax forms. Nikrash signed. Congratulations again. One of the biggest single payouts we've had this year. Beginner's luck. 12:12 a.m. Surveillance room. Shepard's phone rang. Federal prosecutor. Warrant approved. You can detain both subjects for questioning. Shepard turned to Martinez. Find Harris, now. Martinez radioed casino security. Locate Ronald Harris, Maintenance Division. Do not alert. Report position. Response. Harris clocked out at 11:52. Left the building. Shepard. Gone. What about the player? Still upstairs. Accounting office. Don't let him leave. 12:14 a.m. Accounting office. The manager returned with a check. 3,134,000 anonymous. Treasure Island logo at the top. He handed it to Nikrash. I'll walk you out, sir. Nikrash stood, folded the check, placed it in his jacket pocket. He walked toward the door. The door opened. Shepard stood in the hallway with two Nevada Gaming Control officers. Mr. Nikrash, Special Agent Robert Shepard, Nevada Gaming Control Board. Need to ask you a few questions. Nikrash stopped, evaluated. About what? The machine you just played, routine verification. I already gave my information downstairs. Won't take long, just some follow-up. 12:16 a.m. Interview room, small windowless office, fluorescent lights, table, 3 chairs. Nikrash sat across from Shepard. You a regular player here? First time at this casino, but you've played in Las Vegas before? Few times a year. Ever win big before? Not like this. Shepard pulled out a folder, slid a photo across the table. Ronald Harris, maintenance uniform. Recognize this man? Nikrash looked at the photo, paused for 2 seconds. No. He serviced your machine 2 minutes before you hit the jackpot. I saw a technician, didn't get a good look. 12:22 a.m. Surveillance room. Martinez reviewed footage from multiple cameras. He found Nikrash entering the casino at 11:38, walking directly toward the Wheel of Fortune section. Never stopped at any other machine. Stood near WF-12 for 6 minutes, waiting. Martinez radioed Shepard. He knew which machine, went straight there. 12:25 a.m. Interview room. Shepard's radio vibrated. He read the message. Mr. Nikrash, you walked past 300 slot machines tonight, went straight to WF-12. Why? Wheel of Fortune's my favorite. 300 machines. 40 of them are Wheel of Fortune. Why that specific one? Random choice. Shepard leaned back in his chair. Here's the thing. We've been tracking unusual jackpots for 2 years. Statistical anomalies. Patterns. Your name keeps appearing. Different casinos, different states, always near machines that recently had maintenance. Nikrash said nothing. Ronald Harris, you said you don't know him, but we've been watching him for 6 months. And tonight, we watched him open that machine, swap something inside, then watched you sit down and win $3.7 million exactly 3 minutes later. Silence. I want a lawyer. That's your right. But before you go, we're executing search warrants tonight. Your home in Chicago, Harris's apartment, your workshop. Nikrash's expression changed. Just slightly, eyes widened. Shepard noticed. Something in that workshop you don't want us to find? Nikrash stared at the table. 12:32 a.m., Treasure Island parking lot. FBI and Nevada gaming control officers loaded into vehicles, warrants in hand. Destination, Nikrash's Chicago residence and workshop. Estimated arrival, 6 a.m. Central Time. January 17, 1998. 6:14 a.m., Chicago, Illinois. The winter air had that hard, metallic bite that makes every footstep sound louder than it should. In the Cicero neighborhood, a line of unmarked vehicles rolled to a stop in front of a modest single-family home. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed millions. FBI and IRS agents moved with the quiet choreography of people who had rehearsed this moment in their heads for months. Inside, a family was waking up to an ordinary Saturday. Outside, the warrant was already being read. Nikrash's wife and children were escorted out first. No shouting, no dramatic scene. Just the sharp, efficient calm of a raid that had one job: freeze the truth before it could disappear. The agents didn't linger in the living room. They went where the money actually lived. The detached garage, converted into a workshop, sat like a second heartbeat behind the house. When the workshop door opened, the case finally looked less like lucky gambling and more like a manufacturing floor. A metal workbench, shelving units stacked with parts, and slot machines, multiple machines, in various stages of disassembly, their panels removed like ribs. It wasn't the kind of clutter you'd expect from a hobbyist. It was organized, intentional. A place where someone came not to play, but to study. Then came the items that changed the tone from suspicion to certainty. Dozens of small chips stored in labeled cases, marked with casino names, in shorthand only an insider would care to record. There was a commercially available programming device, something legal to buy, innocuous in the right hands, devastating in the wrong ones. Next to it, stacks of notebooks filled with handwriting so consistent it felt like a metronome. Dates, casino names, machine identifiers, jackpot amounts, travel notes. There were hand-drawn floor maps with camera position circled. Shift change schedules for dozens of casinos. Technician names and contact information, written like a private directory. And financial records showing years of gambling winnings distributed across multiple accounts in a pattern that tried to look random, but didn't. By late morning, the evidence was boxed, sealed, and moving. In Las Vegas, at the Nevada Gaming Control Board lab, technicians began the slow, meticulous work that casinos hate and criminals fear, turning suspicion into proof. A chip removed from a targeted machine was examined and compared against its factory-authorized counterpart. The physical component looked legitimate, the kind of part that should have been trusted on site, but the signature of what was inside, the logic, the behavior, the invisible rules didn't match the authorized database. The conclusion wasn't dramatic. It was colder than that. The chip was real, but the instructions it carried were not. The lab's finding didn't exist in a vacuum. It was a key that fit a larger lock. Investigators cross-referenced the notebooks against casino records, jackpots that had always felt a little too convenient. The pattern that emerged was the kind that makes seasoned agents stop making jokes. Dozens of big wins clustered near maintenance activity, the same names repeating across states and properties. The timing was tight, too tight. Jackpots landing minutes after a machine had been opened, serviced, and closed again. Casinos can tolerate superstition. They can tolerate hot streaks. They cannot tolerate math like that. The case file was upgraded. What had started as a strange anomaly became a multi-state racketeering investigation. Prosecutors didn't treat it like a single crime. They treated it like a system: conspiracy, fraud tied to computerized gaming devices, interstate movement of stolen proceeds, money laundering. The language of the charges matched the reality investigators had been circling for years. This wasn't a gambler beating odds. This was an operation. Arrests followed quickly. Between January 19th and 22, technicians were picked up, men who lived in the gray zone between trusted access and untrusted intent. Interrogations began, and the dominoes started to fall in the order they usually do. The first cooperator, the first deal, The first story that matched the evidence too well to be invented. One technician gave a written statement that described his role in facilitating wins and the payments that followed. Others flipped within days. Together, their accounts stitched the scheme into something prosecutors could hold up in court. Specific jackpots, shared profits, and an organizer who stayed just far enough from the physical act to hope it would protect him. Nikrash did not cooperate. Through his attorney, he denied everything. The notebooks were research. The chips were educational. The money was winnings. It was a defense built on distance. No video of him rewriting anything. No footage of his hands swapping parts inside a cabinet. But the prosecution didn't need a single perfect shot. They had a wall of smaller proofs that pointed in one direction. By the time United States versus Dennis Nikrash reached trial in late 1998, the courtroom had become a museum of intent. Notebooks that predicted reality down to the date and amount. Financial deposits that landed like echoes of recorded jackpots. Surveillance clips that placed technicians at machines minutes before improbable wins. Expert testimony explaining, in careful, controlled language, that the machinery had been made to obey a different set of rules than the casino believed it owned. The defense attacked credibility. They argued cooperation was purchased with lighter sentences. They questioned chain of custody. They repeated the same phrase, circumstantial, like it was a spell. But the evidence didn't behave like circumstance. It behaved like a blueprint. On January 14, 1999, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts. 7 years in federal prison. Restitution ordered in the millions, with a portion recovered from seized accounts, and the rest vanishing into the same darkness that had hidden the scheme for so long. Some of the technicians served shorter sentences and walked out years earlier. Licenses were revoked. Careers were erased. The industry's response was immediate and quietly panicked. Casinos tightened maintenance protocols, increased audits, improved logging, and treated the inside of a machine like a crime scene instead of a workplace. Because the final lesson wasn't about greed, it was about trust. A sentencing memo later put it plainly. The defendant exploited a vulnerability the industry didn't want to admit existed. Security had been focused on the wrong threat. Everyone watched the steel box. Everyone watched the cameras. The real battlefield was smaller than a thumbnail, hidden behind panels no guest ever saw. Nikrash was released in 2006. He returned to Chicago. He died in 2010 without ever giving the full technical story investigators wanted. The method remained partly unclear, not because it couldn't be understood, but because he refused to say it out loud. And somewhere in a closed case file, an investigator's final note lingered like a warning. The system didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it trusted the wrong thing.